This video will break down what an aesthetic male physique is and how to build it. We will be highlighting the most aesthetic muscle groups and how to train them. There's two reasons why a man would want an aesthetic physique. One, to attract the opposite sex and garner respect, or two, to compete in bodybuilding. This video is not for the latter. Across every culture in history and surveys done to find the most aesthetic male physique, there's always been a pattern: lean, muscular, and tall. A common phrase in the bodybuilding community is the V-taper, or the upside down Dorito shape. Most people are familiar with the desired female hourglass shape. The upside down Dorito is the male version of that. It's the shape of your body, and this is how you prioritize achieving it. The V-taper is depending on your shoulder to waist ratio. The ideal shoulder to waist ratio in a man is widely considered to be 1.6. You simply find this by dividing your shoulder width and waist width. Pretty simple. Unfortunately, you can't do much to make your waist smaller besides lose fat. Besides that, it's simply dependent on your bone structure. In order to widen your shoulders, you need to focus on 1. Your lats. Your lats play the biggest role in widening your shoulders, specifically your upper lats. Targeting the upper lats is kind of tricky, and while pull-ups and lat pull-downs are great, they focus on your mid and lower lats. By far the best way to target the upper lats is by doing a lat-focused throw, demonstrated here.
Development. But to make it more lats focused, there's a few key set of tweaks that we'll want to make to this. First, tuck your elbows into your sides and keep them there as you row rather than flaring them out. The further away your elbows are from your torso, the more your rear delts and your upper back will be involved and less lats as a result. Next, stop the row once your elbows reach your torso rather than extending beyond this. This should happen naturally if you're focusing on maintaining tension in the lats, since the lats are going to be much less involved in the movement when we pull the elbows further back behind our torso. That added range of motion will come from the rear delts and upper back muscles instead of the lats. You also want to be mindful of your forearms at the end position. Ideally, they should line up with the direction of the cable. So avoid overly flexing or extending the elbow as you pull, as that'll start involving more of your arms instead of your lats. Lastly, as you pull, you want to limit how much you extend and arch your upper back, as that will again put the upper back in a more favorable position compared to the lats. Instead, what you can do, only if comfortable, is incorporate a slight hinge forward at your hips to better line up the lats with the line of pull and to increase their range of motion. As you do this, you'll want to keep your abs engaged and ensure that there's no rounding of your lower back. Depending on your hip mobility, you may only be able to achieve a slight torso lean forward, which is perfectly fine. Some of you may also find that placing your feet on the floor instead is more comfortable, which is also perfectly fine. Now, after you get the setup down, the next key is execution and your thought process as you row. First, rather than thinking about pulling back and pinching your shoulder blades together, initiate the movement by thinking about pulling your elbow down by using your lats. And then, as you pull, continue thinking about bringing your elbow down and in. The shoulder blades are still going to retract during the movement, but you want to avoid starting the movement with that in order to get the lats engaged. If we go back to the lats anatomy and look at their line of pull, you can see how the fibers move down and in. So visualize a rope attaching to your upper arm and pulling down, back, and in towards your spine. That's essentially what your lat is doing and is very helpful to visualize as you pull. Lastly, as for handles, ideally you'd want to use a neutral grip, wider handle to best bias the lats. But applying the form and execution tweaks that I went through will make a big difference regardless of access to. And if you currently don't have access to a cable row, then you can apply most of these tips and cues to something like a dumbbell row in order to make it more lat focused, or just replace the cable with a band. Do know, however, that with these modifications in place, many of you will initially have to drop the weight just a little bit. This is a good thing and expected, because it means that your lats, which are likely weak, are finally being forced to work. But as with any exercise, just focus on getting more familiar with it and gradually increase the load as you get more proficient.
Number 2, the lateral delts. The lateral delts is a much simpler muscle to train, but still very important. In order to target the lateral delts, you need to do either seated lateral raises or cable lateral raises. The chest, specifically the upper chest. Now, technically, having a bigger chest will not give you wider shoulders, but it will give you the illusion that you do. I don't want to talk about how to hit your chest here because that deserves a whole different video, but incline dumbbell presses are the best way to target your upper chest. The next element of the aesthetic male physique is abs. Yes, abs don't affect the shape of your physique. I still include it because how much of a difference having abs could make. Every Greek god statue has abs for a reason. Now, there's usually 2 types of dumbasses. The ones who try to get abs by doing YouTube tutorials without understanding the need to be at a low enough body fat percentage in order to see them. On the other side, there's the everyone has abs, you just have to lose fat. Obviously, everyone has the abdominal muscles, but there's a reason a man like Eddie Halls with upwards of 20% body fat has visible abs, while runners with sub 10% have less visible abs. Yes, being lean is essential, but so is training your abs. I don't want to get super in depth with your abdominals and how to train them because that deserves a whole different video. Just know your lower abs are a lot harder to obtain, or a better word is a lot harder for them to be visible. They'll do flutter kicks or leg raises or something else like twice a week and you'll be fine. You don't have to train them like a boxer, but spending 5 to 10 minutes extra after a workout on your abs will go a long way. If you don't want to do that, just take pictures in better lighting. I'm not saying to neglect the rest of your muscle groups, absolutely not. It is still very important to round out your physique. Understanding everything else is just the cherry on top. Lacking one of the other muscles will not affect your physique nearly as much as lacking abs or having a bad shoulder to waist ratio. This is simply telling you what to prioritize in your training if you want to have an aesthetic physique. But one more point I want to bring up is having thick arms makes you look much better in shirts and will really make it look like you work out while in clothing. This should not be neglected at all because obviously you're going to be in a shirt most of the time. A video on how to optimize arm growth in the future.